Even though I might be the Minister for the Arts, and although I regard as integral to that job to promote Australian culture, we have to promote Australian culture in a way that gives Australian artists, members of the cultural sector, as much freedom as possible. And as a Liberal, of course, I am very strongly committed to the notion of artistic freedom, and I'm very hostile to the idea of there being a single view of cultural policy dictated from on high.
Well, let's move on to the Australia Council, because some people would argue that the Australia Council is what dictates artistic policy from on high. There's always this alertness to whether the minister is dictating artistic policy, but you'll find many people who criticise the council as a kind of closed-in group who are getting to have their say. How happy are you with the way in which the council operates at the moment?
I am happy with the way it operates. I know Rupert Meyer, the chairman, very well. I've known Rupert for about 30 years, in fact, and both Rupert and the general manager, Tony Grabowski, I think, do a very fine job. In Sydney last night, in fact, we had the Australia Council Awards, and it was a great occasion, and I think it displayed what the Australia Council does so well, the awarding of artists who, at various steps in their career, had been encouraged by the Australia Council. There'll always be criticism when a body is charged with the distribution of finite amounts of public money. There'll always be criticism. That just goes with the territory. But I think Australia can be very proud of the Australia Council. It's had bipartisan support from both sides of politics. The idea of an Australia Council for the Arts was first conceived by the Holt Liberal government in 1967. It was put on a statutory basis by the Australia Council Act of the Whitlam government in 1973, and I think its early history demonstrates the strong bipartisan support it's had from the very start.
Let me put some criticisms that are commonplace. One is that too much money goes to Sydney and Melbourne.
Well, I've heard that, and I, of course, come from Brisbane, so I'm very sensitive to that. I think there have been times when that could have been said, but of course it ought to be borne in mind that the largest element of the Australia Council's budget is support for the major performing arts companies, and the largest of the national flagship companies like the Australian Opera and the Australian Ballet are based in Sydney and Melbourne.
Yes. Well, that brings the question of whether there isn't more we could do to overcome the tyranny of distance.
I think it's very, very important, Michael, that people outside the capital cities, not just Sydney and Melbourne, but also Brisbane, Perth, Adelaide and so on, have the greatest access to the best cultural experiences they can in both the performing arts and the visual arts. And one of the government's priorities has been to encourage more investment in regional arts as well, and regional touring programs. Now, in the state from which I come, Queensland, the performing arts companies do this particularly well. Both the Queensland Ballet and the Queensland Orchestra have had ambitious regional touring programs in my state in the last couple of years, and I know that's the case in other states as well.
Can we talk about some basic issues of philosophy? The government, the Liberal Party in particular, the government is a free enterprise government. It's in favour of deregulation. We saw how far that leads with the decision not to prop up Holden. What is the philosophical justification for a free enterprise government supporting the arts in this way? Why not let the market determine what arts will thrive and what arts will flounder?
It is necessary that the government support arts companies if we are to have a healthy cultural sector. Of the 28 major performing arts companies, all of them depend on government support to a greater or lesser extent. Even the most successful don't break even from the market alone. And there's another dimension too, because the arts are about more than prosaic things like roads and bridges and railways. I mean, the arts are part of a nation's identity. They are part of a nation's soul. And when we look at a country from the eyes of people overseas, they're part of a nation's branding in the world, as it were. So I am a very, very strong advocate of the notion that we shouldn't equate the arts with other aspects of infrastructure. They have a unique role in any civilised society, and that requires appropriate and targeted government support.
Senator George Brandis, it's been good to talk to you. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Mark.